Welcome back, folks. So last time we were together, we learned the central dogma of biology. And I mentioned that almost every cell has DNA. But we hadn't quite learned what cells are. So let's jump in today and learn about cells. Learn what they are, what they're made of, and what they do. So first, I have a short kind of interactive link to show everyone. And I want to show you this because it's a good example of showing kind of what scale we're talking about when we talk about cells. So let's go ahead and take a look. And you're welcome to go to this link in the PowerPoint slides yourself. So here we are reading a piece of paper, right? This is Times regular 12-point font. Coffee bean, a grain of rice. And we are at about a 1 meter scale. Let's zoom in to the centimeter scale, down to a sesame seed and a grain of salt. Now when we're this small, we're starting to be able to see an amoeba, a paramecium, a human egg. Now let's go from centimeters to millimeters. Now we can start to see some human cells, a human skin cell, a human egg cell, a photoreceptor, a sperm, for example. And here we are at smaller than millimeter length. We're at 10 micrometers, it looks like. Let's zoom in closer to the micrometer, and you can see red blood cell, a chromosome, the X chromosome, a yeast, and as we get smaller into the micrometer scale, you can now start to see some bacteria. A lysosome and a mitochondria. You probably have heard of mitochondria. These are parts of human cells. And what if we zoom in even more past this bacterium? We can see now some viruses, measles, influenza, HIV, hepatitis. And as we zoom in more and more, we can see some viruses, but now we can start to see ribosome, that is a protein. Hemoglobin, that's a protein. We have RNA. And if we zoom in even more, we can see an adenine. This is one of the bases that we learned about in the central dogma. And if we zoom in far enough, here we're at like picomolar scale, so super, super small, a single atom. All of this to say, folks, that cells, if we zoom back out to get a few cells in our view, bacteria, very small, micrometers. Human skin cell, 30 micrometers, right? These are tiny. Let us continue. So, cells. Human cells are about 10 to 30 micrometers. I need to change my text on this slide because that should be a lowercase m. Bad job, Dr. Livezey. I'll change this before I upload them if I remember. So this should be a small m, not a big M. There are about 30 trillion human cells in your body. That's a lot. Bacterial cells are much smaller. They're about 1 to 3 micrometers, okay? So about 10 times smaller than a human cell. There are roughly 38 trillion bacterial cells in your body. So by numbers alone, you're really more bacteria than you are human. Let's start learning about bacterial cells. So we classify bacterial cells as prokaryotic. Why? Well, we're scientists. We need a lot of fancy words to describe things with, right? I bet you feel that way a little bit as you're looking at this slide. And so this is overall what a bacterial cell looks like. And over the next 2 slides, we'll walk ourselves through some of the various parts of a bacterial cell. Okay, so on the outside, folks, we have the plasma membrane. The plasma membrane is going to kind of encapsulate everything that is inside of the cell. But the plasma membrane isn't particularly sturdy. So bacterial cells have a cell wall. The cell wall is a bit thicker, it's more sturdy, it provides protection to these bacterial cells. Let's jump inside of this bacterial cell. Everything inside of the bacterial cell is kind of floating in water. In that water, there are so many different types of chemicals. There are sugars, there are proteins, there are fats, all sorts of things. And so this mixture of water and other molecules, we call that the cytoplasm. All of these little red dots that you can see kind of inside of the cytoplasm, those are ribosomes. And so a ribosome, how do I want my arrow to go? It's going to get all over the place here. Ribosome is one type of important protein inside of cells. And this protein's job is to convert RNA to protein, which we learned about during the central dogma. And then in bacterial cells, there's a central region called the nucleoid. And that is just kind of the central space where all of the DNA is smushed up. And that are some basics that are like really kind of the big ideas to take away from this bacterial cell. Bacterial cells are fairly simple compared to something like an animal cell. And so animal cells are called eukaryotic cells, another fancy name that scientists had to use. And on this screen, what I tried to do was compare for you the size of a eukaryotic cell, which is big, 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 and a bacterial cell, which is rather small. And if you can't already tell just by looking at this picture, eukaryotic cells are much more complicated than bacterial cells. I'll go back to that slide real quick. Look at the various components of this cell. If we kind of zoom out, we have like the casing, we have the nucleoid, but like there's not many more different parts of the cell. But if we look at this picture, there's all sorts of stuff going on. Like there's whatever this is, there's these things, there's the stuff in the middle. Eukaryotic cells are complicated, but they do share some similarities, and so that's what we're going to get into next.